Hey guys, the Murdaugh case is coming to a close. The jury will have it soon. They will need to do what many observers have already done, form a conclusion on whether the state has made its case beyond a reasonable doubt. Let's look at how one is supposed to evaluate this, and a very terrible way to do it. Obviously, the term reasonable doubt implies the use of reason. Not everyone apparently can do that. This video is sparked by comments in various places, and one that I'll use from here that I'll quote later on, demonstrating how one can make assumptions, engage in wild speculation, make things up, and tie it all up in a bow of confirmation bias, leaving one in a cocoon of self-assurance, sadly insulated from the real world and the process of quality critical thinking. I think that's called social media. This can and does happen on either side of a case, but here it seems more prevalent in favor of Murdaugh. So of course the state has the burden of proof. They make the charge, they need to substantiate it with evidence, and beyond reasonable doubt. What does that mean? One thing it doesn't mean is making wild, evidence-free alternative explanations. It also does not mean each piece of evidence by itself must establish guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. The evidence, when viewed collectively, must establish the elements of the crime beyond a reasonable doubt. And it's hard to define reasonable doubt. Lawyers like to try to do it. They like to try to get the jury instructions to skew the idea of it to the side of the case they're on. But in South Carolina, you'll find a jury instruction that says it's not finding that there's no other way this could have happened, but rather a firm conviction that the defendant did the crime, not to the exclusion of any other possibility, but a firm conviction that the defendant did the crime. Now, you can imagine it however you want. It is a little bit of a slightly slippery concept. So there's three possibilities here. He did it. The evidence shows it. Not guilty, right? He didn't do it. Not guilty, of course, right? I'm not firmly convinced he did it on the evidence shown. Not guilty. That's it. Three ways to bring this up. Of course, get a hung jury, but I'm talking about a verdict. Now, I think he did do it, but I can see how someone could see it a different way. For instance, on motive, even though motive is not required, people usually want to see motive because it helps understand why the normally non-murderous person acted differently at the time in question. And the state's idea of motive here, it's not convincing even to me, and I think he did do it. So if motive is important to you, and you don't buy the state's theory, then the state has an issue here when you're trying to evaluate the evidence. I totally agree with that. Also, of course, the weapons were not recovered, and there's no direct evidence Murdaugh committed the crime. And you could look at the state's case, which I think was presented in a somewhat disjointed manner, and the investigation, which left things to be desired, and you could come to the conclusion that, hey, the circumstances, and I'll discuss some of those materially in a minute, they're less than firmly convincing to me. I don't see this beyond a reasonable doubt. Then your decision is clear. It's not guilty. I get that. But there is a case against him. And that's something some people simply cannot admit. And the mental gyrations they do to avoid short-circuiting by actually engaging in critical thinking is sad. Let's take the central matter. The state presents the idea that the victims were likely murdered around 8:50 p.m. The defense implicitly recognizes the high likelihood of this in several ways, including Murdaugh's decision to lie about being at the scene anywhere near this time, instead napping at the house, and then the defense pays someone to test the house during said nap time to indicate that he would not have heard the shots. He would have been in blissful slumber while these shots were being fired. And that's really only important if you believe that they were murdered at the time he was up at the house. In other words, before he left at 9:06. So the parties are being realistic given the cell phone evidence that shows both victims' phones locking just before 8:50 p.m. and they're never unlocked to be used again. Conversations simply abandoned in midstream. So it's obviously important for Murdaugh to say, I was not there at that moment. And also, if I was up at the house napping, as I say, I wouldn't have heard the murders. Now, it's possible he was up there doing this nap, as he originally said. He didn't hear it. That's a great alibi. He told it to the police from the beginning, right from the start, lying to the police. Told it over multiple days to the police. Told it to every law partner that we've heard from. The consistent lie of, I was not down at the kennels and certainly not there at the time of the murders. But oops, the kennel Snapchat video. Paul took a video on Snapchat that Murdaugh was unaware of that placed Murdaugh down at the kennels, directly contradicting his story. That video ends just 2.5 minutes before the victim's phones lock. And he didn't magically transport at the end of this video that he didn't know what was happening back up to the house. So he was basically there or on his way back to the house, but he was in that parameter, that scene, that area at the time the victims were last ever heard from. And he said he was never down there. He said he was always up at the house. So yeah, why did he lie about this critical fact? Hello? He didn't want to be at the murder scene at the time of the murders. Just go ahead and gloss right over that if you're a Murdaugh stan, if you can't process it. But if you can't admit that the defendant lying about being at the murder scene at a time essentially contemporary with the murders is bad for the defendant, you simply can't be reasoned with. And we'll get into this comment here. I can tell you a little bit about it because I've gotten a few of these and some of them have gone away. And finally, I think I'll respond to the logic being presented. So here's an example of a brain overload failing to process the significance of the last person to see the victims alive, lying about being at the murder scene at the time of the murders. Quote, "We should sink so low to sat guilty because he lies and he lied about the kennel." I think that's what they're trying to say. I bet most people know why he lied about the kennel, but even if he didn't lie about that, he'd still be charged on crap evidence. All right, Einstein. Yes, he was justified in lying about not being at the murder scene at the time of the murders. Justified. Everybody knows why, right? I mean, who wouldn't have lied about the last time you saw your family alive as you're supposedly trying to help the police investigate their murders? Plus, it doesn't matter that he lied about that. He would have been charged anyway. Well, you can apply that logic to anything. They could have found the guns with his fingerprints on it, found a video of him saying he did it. You could say none of that matters because he would have been charged anyway. Right? You get charged when there's evidence against you. And this is a bad piece of evidence for him, a video of him at the scene of the crime that he said he was not at that time. So it does matter. It showed he lied about his alibi. It really can't get more basic than this. Not surprisingly, that stellar example of reasoning was followed by this gem. They never took evidence from the victims or the area around them. What? That, of course, is blatantly false. They canvassed the area around them and recovered the shotgun shells, the rifle cartridges. They looked at this, they looked at that. They checked the bodies. They're experts testifying in the case about it. So that's simply a fabrication to say that obviously there could be evidence of this, the tiny ninja there, and they just skipped over it. But it's completely false, right? But a lot of times if you're skipping over a crucial situation, like the person lying about their alibi, you need to throw some other things in there, like they didn't even look for evidence, bro. But that's false. This person carries on to say, when I grew up in the ghetto of my city, I had many I think it means grandbanger friends. I assume gangbanger, but I don't know. Maybe they're grandbangers. I don't know what that is. Most were Hispanic at that time and many were very short. Now we're seeing where this person bought into the cartoon showing the 5'2" shooter. The cartoon, it wasn't real life. The scenario, and it's possible someone was 5'2", but not more probable than they were some other height, and that it would be hard for anyone of some other height to make these shots is not correct, as I actually demonstrated in real life and not a cartoon. But this person's hypothesis that the cartoon 5'2" shooter leads to Hispanics. Now, this casual racism leads to this excellent conclusion. The cartoon says the shooter was short. Hispanics are short. Cartels are Hispanic. Cartels deal drugs. Murdaugh was involved in drugs. So the cartel shows up to do this as, quote, and I'm not making this up, they can't kill him because he needs to make the money, so they kill the people they love. That's a straight shot from evidence to evidence to evidence, right? No. It's supposed to be reasonable doubt, not a rejected script from Breaking Bad. There's zero evidence of this cartel stuff, and of course it ignores the evidence that the 300 blackout used was a Murdaugh family weapon, because cartels are generally known to need to borrow guns from their victims. The sad belief in the tiny ninja theory pollutes the thinking further with this nugget. The angle of the shotgun would put the butt of the shotgun below the ground. Something's not right with that. Yeah, but I don't think it's the evidence. I think it's you. But would make sense for a short person with a sawed-off shotgun. Dude, if the gun is touching the ground, then it doesn't make any difference how tall or short the person is, and that they're either on the ground or they're kneeling. Again, I did that in real life with 3 different linked shotguns and not just my imagination. I didn't have to use a sawed-off shotgun to make this shot from the ground, but you're just imagining things, and it doesn't even help your tiny ninja theory the tiny Hispanic cartel member theory. But why smear only an entire ethnic group with absolute evidence-free fantasy? Why not smear the family of the young woman who was killed when Paul drunkenly crashed his boat? I mean, why not? Even Alec Murdaugh said no to that on the stand, but no bridge is too far for internet galaxy brains. Quote, I think the boat accident could be potential as well. I'd be pissed if Miss Beach was my family member and justice wasn't being served. So now the 5'2" member of Mallory Beach's family is the news story. What's great about wild, evidence-free speculation is you can make up any fantasy scenario you want, even if it means slandering the Beach family. Matlock carries on saying, additionally, I'm 5'3", I shoot guns. Have you turned yourself in yet? There's more evidence in this statement that you did it than any of the fantasies you propose. But again, try reasoning. It can be fun. The shooter might have been any height, 5'1", 5'4", 11, 5'5", 6'5", 6'6". The cartoon does not in any way prove otherwise. Already demonstrated that in a video in real life. My wife and I both laughed at this, and she is a 5'3" Hispanic. Please don't turn her in. And we both tried to shot angles on the jig based on the actual expert measurements, not just our fantasy realm here, actual measurements. Okay? So she's got a lot of experience with firearms, a lot of 3-gun matches. She's a trained instructor. I've been a competition shooter too, but before that, I was a Green Beret, so I know my way around firearms too. This isn't just fantasy. We used the expert measurements, our own expertise in firearms, and tested this, and it's as dumb as it sounds that the person had to be 5'2". But this person, having reached all the conclusions they had, they couldn't imagine how somebody could be making the logical fallacies that I was making. Are you a lawyer? Because you would expect the state to come with evidence beyond a reasonable doubt. Okay, I do expect the state to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt, something I say whenever I'm talking about criminal cases. You obviously have not heard me say, I think the state doesn't have to prove a case beyond reasonable doubt. So you are making that up, right? You're making that up. And also, am I a lawyer? Well, you didn't do any research on this channel, obviously, or that wouldn't really be a mystery. But why research that if you're not going to research the other things like they didn't collect evidence around the scene? When you've got a 5'2" Mexican cartel member who might be related to the Beach family committing this crime, whatever. Now, having the state prove its case beyond a reasonable doubt does not mean that the state has to rebut evidence-free slanders against entire ethnic groups and grieving families. That's not part of their job. Their job is to talk about the defendant and whether he did it or not fantasy situations that people can concoct in their head. Having questioned whether I'm an attorney or not without doing any research or even looking at the video that I'd done where I did say it had to be proven beyond a reasonable doubt, the person then assesses my mental state and says, I think you fell for the see he's a liar he must have murdered. Of course you think that, because every single thing has to line up with your opinion. In my opinion, the state put on too much evidence of financial crimes, and this could raise a Rule 403 issue on appeal. But it's hardly irrelevant. The fact he lies about major material felony crimes while stealing from clients including children, close friends, paralyzed victims, indicates that when he takes the stand, skepticism of his testimony is warranted. The fact he lied about not being at a murder scene, which he now admits, that's consistent with his pattern and practice of lying to get away with things. What was he trying to get away with the lie about not being at the murder scene? Not really a mystery, is it? Also, only a couple of months later, he literally staged a scene that was meant to portray a false murder or attempted murder scene, right? He planned it ahead of time. Then he lied about it to 911, lied about it to the first responders, lied about it to the investigators, sketch artists, and the public until evidence finally overwhelmed him. Sounds like this case. Not exactly a stretch to see that he makes calculated, planned efforts to deceive law enforcement on major crimes, like it looks like he did in this case. At any rate, in my opinion, the fact he was present at the scene, essentially at the time the murders took place, lied about that to law enforcement until unexpected evidence proved his presence. At least one weapon, if not both, were family weapons. He had no blood on him later on from his alleged post-murder checking on the victims. Then he later stages an attempted murder scene. He was under tremendous mental stress from addiction, the mental effects of that, the coming cascading financial and social destruction of his reputation and everything he'd ever owned. And who knows the internal family stress of that? You think they didn't argue over this? It all leaves me firmly convinced he did it. If those factors don't firmly convince you, I respect that. But if you don't think those factors exist, you're dumb. Now, the defense has still got a few more witnesses to put on, an expert or two, and maybe somebody else, I don't know. So who can say? Maybe that would cause even my opinion to change. I'm going to see what they have to say. Then the jury gets it. If anyone tells you they know what a jury will do, that person is a fool. It can be fun to guess what they'll do, but you're just guessing. And I'm looking forward to the closing arguments. That will be the attorney's best effort to lay their contentions out clearly. Anyway, don't let the tendency for confirmation bias overwhelm your abilities to see both sides of an issue. It can be difficult to process, but cases are rarely perfect in either direction. So if you're construing everything as either completely consistent with your theory or utterly without merit if it contradicts in any way your theory, you're probably doing a poor job of reasoning and you can't be taken seriously. Thanks, bye.